Microphones are on.
Get him happy for the rest of the year to help him.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have a quorum, and I call this special committee of the whole meeting for Monday, January 27th, 2014 to order. We'll begin with adoption of the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Lane, that the agenda for the January 27th special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is, thank you, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts they need to declare at this time? I don't see any. Can that be so noted that no members have any conflicts? Next is our presentation by our treasurer. Good evening. PowerPoint presentation that you provided to council. And I wonder if that light can be adjusted. Maybe, Kim, if you can just turn that light off on the screen. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Pupel.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and members of the public. Tonight's my pleasure to present to you the 2014 operating budget for council's consideration. In November of 2013, we had a special meeting of council where it was presented to council that at that time the impacts that were facing the town would represent a 1.63% increase on the budget. Since that meeting, staff have worked to reduce that amount down to a 1.49% increase, as you've noted in your binders. You will note that the increases in one department help offset the savings are offset by savings in another department. And there have been savings that have been realized in new technologies and work process improvements that have also offset some of the increases for 2014. Included on your desktop is the the pre-budget meeting public open house requests and the responses to those requests. After approval of this budget, formal emails or letters will go out to those individuals explaining exactly what was done with the request. And it's all been detailed in the spreadsheet for you. Also included is in the permissive grants is the allocation of 25, it's actually 25,600, I apologize for that error. This amount of course will remain unspent until a report to council or the issue is debated by council at the next meeting. In talking about the savings that have been realized over 5 years, you'll note that in 2014 in this budget again we have a core operating expenditures savings of 23,018, largely due to some changes we have made in the procurement of photocopiers and the process of the copying costs. So those expenses that savings is realized going forward into the future. And over 5 years we have a total savings of 415,943 from core operating expenses. Again, at the pre-budget meeting that we had a 1.63% increase that was presented to council. At that time, the net expenditure increases that were detailed in the report were 220,000. Extensive work has been done. That was a very lean process with the impacts being those things that we already knew. It didn't include things that we knew we needed to increase, like winter control and those kind of areas. So we did a lot of work, all staff members, to bring it down to the 141,563, reducing that 1.63 to 1.49. The result is the increase. You'll note on the total expenditure line, the total increase is 332,457, and this increase is made up of the following. It's a little bit small for reading. I've put copies of the budget on your desk, or the presentation on your desk as well. And they include the salary, the COLA adjustment, and some grid movement, an amount of 77,000. And that COLA adjustment was what was discussed with council at the pre-budget meeting, and it's the 1.13%, which is what the CPI index increase is for the year. The employee benefits of 15,000, and those are things like CPP, EI, and OMERS that increase with salaries. The general labor position that was reported to council in late fall of 2013 for consideration tonight. Legal fees increased to better reflect the actual cost of $53,000. Winter control, anticipated requirements due to the additional prediction of snowfalls Mr. Mantle has provided. Street lighting, pole replacement requirements has increased. The Welland Hospital Foundation, it was approved last year, however, it's impacting the budget in 2014. The long-term debt obligation increase, largely due to taking on the Fenwick Fire Station number 2, and that's the interest portion of that debenture for 2014. Youth programs and the swim program increases of $19,000. These increases are offset by additional revenues, but they are an increase to the expenditure, causing that to be at $332,000. And there's software license requirements, mostly due to AutoCAD requirements in the planning and technician area, and also the Summerfest increase, which provides you the details for what makes up the $332,457. We've had an increase in revenues of $90,303, and our growth is $100,592, giving a net increase in the operating budget of $141,563. Just wanted to explain that the externally regulated increases are those previously approved by council, total more than our net increase of $195,761. And those include those things that I've already talked about, the Summerfest, the legal fees, the Welland Hospital Foundation, long-term debt, and the COLA adjustment. And the externally regulated item is the benefits under CPP&I that we have to pay out. So that total is $195,761. It forms a large part of the $332,000. So most of the other expenditures are covered off by additional revenues or savings in other departments. So based on that, our total expenditures, as you can see, is $332,457. Our revenues increased by $90,303, resulting in a net expenditure of $242,155. Our assessment growth for 2014 is $105,992, which is 1.06%. And if you recall, at the special meeting of council, it was brought forward at 0.63, so considerably higher. At that time, we didn't have the final supplementals in, so it was a conservative estimate. So we're quite pleased that it's over 1%, and that helps to reduce our overall increase to 1.49%. This is how the growth is calculated. We take all the transactions that happen throughout the year with respect to supplementals, increase in assessments throughout the year that are not the phased-in increases. They are just the ones that are resulting from additions or buildings or pool permits and so forth. And that's what makes up that $100,592. So you can see on the left-hand side, again, this is the operating expenditure increase of 1.49. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the tax levy increase, which is also 1.49 or 1.5, which this year it matches exactly 100%. The actual average assessment of a home for 2013 was $291,556. That increased this year to $298,000, which is a 2.21% increase. Our tax rate will be decreasing, the tax levy rate, due to the fact that we have higher assessments and our rate is at 1.49, which is lower than the overall increase, thereby giving the cost per day to the average tax person a 1.5% increase or $20 on their tax bill for 2014. This is the summary of the year-over-year assessment changes. It's quite consistent with previous years. Again, our residential base is about 90% of the total assessment that we collect in the region, in the town. And overall assessment has increased by 3.45%, but there was significant increases in managed forest and the commercial vacant units as well. Given if the 1.49% increase is approved by council, our 5-year average will remain the same at 2.35% for 5 years. And this is just a chart to show that increase over the 5 years. And tonight's presentation reflects, of course, only the town's portion of the operating budget. And once the region and education tax rates, and actually we did receive the education tax rates today, they have dropped. They've gone down a small percentage, and which will mean the blended rate will be lower than the 1.8 I think we had it calculated at. So the new tax rates will then be presented to council for consideration once the region has adopted their rates, and it's usually about May 2014. So I will take any questions now.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Pupo. Appreciate it, and for your work, your staff's work, and all staff work on this operating budget. I know that it begins back in the fall, and you work diligently on it to shepherd it through, so thanks to all staff. Do members of council have any questions for Ms. Pupo and possibly other directors at this time?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This year is a new base year for MPAC's assessments. What impact did that have on your calculation of increases? Did it have any bearing whatsoever?
No, we for the sake of creating the tax base, the tax ratios, we use the pre-flip amount. So the increase that you saw was the 3.11% average that the residential is going up. And I mean, at this point, it doesn't impact how much more additional revenues we're going to get. It just helps us to calculate what that tax rate is. And because it's going up that 3.11, say on residential line, it's actually causing our tax rate to go down. The actual levy rate.
It is, and that's based on a new base year
Yes.
calculation. Okay. I have a couple other.
Yeah, go ahead, Council.
Okay.
Unless others, what I'd like to do actually is if we get to a spot where there's others that might have questions on it, maybe they can pile on, but go ahead, Councilor. If there's
Okay.
anyone else on the rate at this point? No? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Section 2.1, the operating revenues, transportation services, there's a miscellaneous of 25,000, which is an increase of 5,000. What's miscellaneous in revenues that come in?
It is driveway culverts revenues that we receive. When we do a driveway culvert, they get back exactly what it costs us to do that. It includes the cost of the culvert plus the staff time to do that. It's also scrap metal that's sold out at the Tice Road Yard and any other miscellaneous revenues that might come in through there. The majority of it is driveway culverts.
Okay, thank you. Others on transportation services at this point? Okay, go ahead. Well, Councilor, go ahead.
One more, Section 8. 8.1, farmland, there actually is a decrease in value there. I'm just wondering how we can have a decrease in farmland value.
It would be from farmland switching possibly to residential for some reason. I would have to look into that, but this is straight from the MPAC reports that come offline from MPAC. So sometimes we'll get messages that this farm has changed to a residential land use, and then we have to make the adjustment in-house here. But I mean, we could find out particularly the project, the properties that are in question there from MPAC and come back if you wanted to know.
So $1,400 decrease in farmland could mean a 10,000 increase in residential if
That's
the
right,
zoning change.
exactly.
Councilor, I just wonder if that might be, is that one for 2013? Isn't the next one 8.2? Doesn't it have the increase in the farmland from 99 to 107?
That would be the in-year farmland for 2013. The pre-flip stuff is the in-year transactions.
Okay.
So that would be, if a farm changed to residential or industrial, it goes from one line to the
Oh,
other.
I see. Okay, perfect, thank you. Councilor Gurley would know that because of his previous experience with MPAC.
That's all for now. I may have some later, but
Okay,
certainly I'll
perfect.
give other people a chance.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Others? Questions on the presentation, the budget? Councilor Kersey and then Councilor Lane.
I have a question with how we're dealing with this. Is this the presentation and now we're on our own to ask questions as we go through each section? Or is Madam Treasurer going to deal with each section and then we ask questions about those sections, which is typically how we've done it?
Yeah, the conversation I had with the treasurer in advance was that she was going to offer the presentation, which was provided to council in advance. And then it was, council wanted to ask questions about specific items. I think in the past, when we've done it area by area, we tend to do that when there's a number of capital items associated with it. But by all means, we can go through each section, however council wants to do with it. That's how the treasurer proposed that we have the presentation and then ask questions.
Okay,
So
just as long
if you
as I
wanna-
know, I have several questions then. I'd like to direct this question to, and again, I'm trying to stay at
You
the,
can direct it to me, and I will
yeah,
direct it.
that's fine, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the advice on format here. The question that I want to pose, it would be directed to all directors, perhaps one at a time. With inflation having run between 1.2 and 1.5% over the last 4 years, the term of this council, and us having to keep up with the COLA adjustments that we've made with salary, and yet we've held the line at a pretty reasonable increase. If you take only 4 years, it's about 2.13%. I'm wondering, and I'd like to hear from the directors on what services and programs have had to be reduced or modified in their particular areas of expertise, and how they view this as having impact on the community at large and the management of their particular departments.
Mr. CAO?
I can offer a general response, Mr. Mayor, and I would have to ask the director specifically to respond pertaining to their individual departments, but we've worked very hard to maintain our level of service and also actually enhance the level of service for the community, all the while controlling costs. I think we've done that through workplace efficiencies. We've definitely found a number of areas where we've saved money. We've also brought in new technologies that have helped us reduce operating expense as well, which has allowed us to continue to offer great services and enhance those services for the community. So I'm not aware of any detrimental impact it's had on any individual department. We have tightened our belt. There's no doubt about it. There has been efficiencies that have been found, and through the the discipline of the treasurer and director for myself, keeping spending levels where they were, and forcing people to sharpen their pencil, I think has been an effective exercise for us. So unless there's anything to add, that would be my general answer. I don't know if you still want to hear from the individual directors or not.
Okay, thank you. Individual directors. Ms. Pupo, do you want to add anything to what the CAO has said?
No,
In
I
answer-
concur with the CAO and our department, regardless of the COLA adjustment, the staff, we are able to do a lot more. But again, we're constantly trying to find workplace efficiencies and how we process things and do things for customers so that we can offer better customer service all the time to them. So it has not impacted my department at all. So I'll let the other directors speak to that as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mantle, would you like to add anything to what the CAO and the treasurer have said?
Certainly
You can sit down, it's fine.
thanks.
Put your shades on.
We haven't noticed anything different with respect to the level of service we provide. As the treasurer said, there's efficiencies out there that we will latch on from time to time, and I see no difference from what we've been doing in past years.
Aside from sidewalk snow clearing?
Sidewalks, no clear, you got it.
Okay, thank you. Chief, is there anything to add?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we've done some restructuring, and you guys have given us good direction on some of the changes we're allowed to make, and it's just, we're kind of staying in line, so I don't think if anything, we've increased our services as far as fire bylaw.
Thank you. Ms. Van Ravensway, anything to add?
Yeah, we had to sharpen our pencil. Our programs basically will stay the same. As you know, we had to increase our swimming fees, some of them, to make sure that we're meeting our expenses. Our revenues in facilities will decrease due to construction. Centennial 3 will be out, and Marlene Sturster
Old Pelham Town
Park
Hall.
and the Old Pelham Town Hall. And therefore, we've tried to enhance our revenues in creative ways. During events, run different activities to hopefully enhance, to offset those revenues lost.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Van Ravensway, and I think Mr. CAO, is there anything on the planning side? that you'd
No,
like to
Mr.
add?
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Counselor?
Okay, as a follow-up to that, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we could ask all of the directors through you that when they first took a first crack at their budgets and they made their wish lists up, what were some of the programs and services that they had on their wish list that ultimately they had to leave on the cutting room floor? And just so that we have some sense of the types of growth that they might want to have seen in their department, but were unable to because we were trying to hold the line. I'd just like to get a perspective on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO.
Generally speaking, again, I'm not aware of any significant initiatives that have been left on the cutting room floor. We tailor our programming and services towards the strategic goals and vision of council. That's been very clearly laid out, and you know, the biggest thing was the fire chief's vehicle, which he managed to somehow get through, and apart from that, I think that's it.
Thank you. Other directors, Mr. CAO, you still want to continue? No? Other directors, is there anything to add to what the CAO has said?
Well, just the process is that all the departmental budgets come back to my office. I review them all. There was not any programs cut whatsoever from those original requests that come in. What I do is I go back and I look line by line with the CAO, and we look to see what the history is in that account of the type of spending that happens. And if there's a request there, and we know that we want to come in at, you know, at 1.63 or lower, and there's no history that that request was ever spent in that magnitude, we'll go back to the director and say, you know, like, you don't have a history of spending this type of money in this area. So, and it could just be like materials and supplies or, you know, office supplies or whatever. So are we able to cut this? Because you haven't spent it in 5 years, you know, why would you be spending it now? And that's how we do the cuts. It's detailed like that. It's not like looking at a program and saying, we're not doing this program at all. If Vicky has a program, for instance, or Al has something new that he wants to bring forward, we'll make that work and find other areas to adjust the budget. So that's the process that takes place, and, you know, the directors are all communicated with that
Okay.
something's been cut.
Thank you. Any other comments from any directors that haven't commented yet? Okay. Counselor?
Okay, now I'll get just a little bit more specific, Mr. Mayor, if I could. I'd like assurance that we've talked about in our strategic plan, one of the things that we wanted to do was to have consistent signage throughout the town. And when I raised the question under the capital budget, when we were talking about that, I was given assurance that that could be included in the operating side of transportation services. I wonder if that is in fact included.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that it's in the contracted services and roadway maintenance.
It is.
Thank you.
Another area that this council has spent significant money is in the cultural master plan, the heritage master plan, development of that. And both of those plans made specific recommendations with respect to staffing on a go-forward basis to roll those plans out and not have them collect dust on the shelf. How have we addressed that in terms of staffing and being able to roll out some of the recommendations that are contained within both those plans? Mr. Mayor, through you, perhaps to Ms. Van Ravensway or someone else who might feel comfortable to
Okay.
speak to that.
All right, I'm going to call on the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To answer the councillor's question, we certainly have not shelved the cultural master plan or the heritage master plan. Those documents are living documents. Specific to the cultural master plan, there was a recommendation for an additional staff person in the recreational department to look after cultural issues. That was viewed or operationally. I know Vicky had advocated for that, but strategically in 2014 that was not a priority. We have identified an additional staff priority in the public works area, specifically under facilities. But that's not to say that we haven't been rolling out the plan and executing elements of the plan up to and including its inclusion in the leisure plan research that has been done. We have also been talking with them about the question raised by council with regards to the recreation facility, whether or not there will be cultural programming space. Certainly that's something to consider, but the cultural master plan as well made a number of sort of unqualified recommendations that have really not been demonstrated quantitatively, and that's some work that I think we still need to do. For example, they called for I believe it was the construction of a museum Certainly not a priority for us culturally at this point, but not something that we would forget about. So I'm not sure if Ms. Van Ravensway has anything to add to that or not.
Anything to add, Ms. Van Ravensway? No?
No.
Okay. Counselor?
Well, I had understood when the cultural master plan was being undertaken and there was, the research was done and there was some discussions around the table, that there was grant money available to assist municipalities in the rollout of a cultural master plan vis-a-vis, percentage of salaries, et cetera, et cetera. Have we investigated that? That would certainly reduce the impact on our go-forward budget, but still allow us access to that type of service.
What is an answer for that?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of any grant opportunities at this current time for cultural master planning.
Not at this current time. That was in the spring. They offered that through the Cultural Development Fund, I believe you call it.
Okay, thank you.
Last area, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Let's see if there's anything further
Okay, sure, go ahead.
cultural. Thank you. Anything further on cultural from our council colleagues? Not at this time. Go ahead, Councillor. Sorry to cut you off.
The last area of concern that I have in the budget here is to do with the library. It's recommended in this budget as 0.8%. I know that the library put forward a 6%, originally a 13%. They went back to the drawing table and put forward a 6% budget application. Unlike many of the departments that we have in our community, in our town here, the library is in fact an independent body, dependent on us for financing, but independent in terms of the way they work and the way they spend their money and all of that sort of thing. But having said that, they still need to report to us with an audited statement, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems to me, without more detail on the 6% budget that was put forward, it'd be difficult for us as a council to make a decision this evening on that budget allocation of 0.8% versus the 6%. So what I would propose, if there's a motion to approve this budget, Mr. Mayor, I will be putting forward an amendment which will at least allow the library an opportunity to meet with us and make a presentation to us with respect to the 6% budget that they put forward and what the implications of going forward with a 0.8% increase are. And also, I'm reluctant somewhat to move on this library budget, given the discussions that are taking place with respect to Maple Acres at this time as well. So I guess what I'm saying is, if indeed we are going to approve this budget to take it forward to council, I'll be proposing an amendment to allow the library an opportunity to speak to their section of the budget before we pass on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I don't know if the treasurer or the CAO want to respond to that. I do note that from our meeting back in December that was one of the items to deal with, and I understood that there was always going to be, and it was item number 2. The first was to deal with facilities, how might we find a suitable space for Maple Acre Library, etc. But the second item was to deal with those financial pieces, and it was my understanding that the library was to, and staff, and the library staff, yourself, were, as member of the library board, were to meet and to discuss those items. So maybe we can hear from the treasurer. Has that meeting occurred? Is it scheduled? How's it been hashed out, and how did one arrive at this amount that's presented this evening?
Yes, thank you. The meeting has not happened between the library board and town staff. The clerk has been busy trying to get the other meetings between the council and the library board set up and to deal with those issues. So for the purposes of this budget, that department got exactly what the other departments in the town got. It's a 1.1% increase, COLA adjustment on the salary line items only. As we had said to the department heads, you have to maintain your base expenditures outside of salaries at their current level or lower to help offset. So at this time, that's what we brought forward with knowing that we still need to have this discussion and that it could be redlined or red circled and say, you know, that isn't the grant allocation until such time as the board meets and a report comes back to council at a later date.
Okay, thank you. I did find that wording, and it was, how might we develop a plan to address the operational deficit of the library that is aligned with the parameters used by the town for its operating budget? And I think the treasurer alluded to that. So, councilors, anything, or Ms. Poop, anything further on that?
Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions from other councilors? I had Councilor Lane next. Councilor Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, on page 2.1 of our presentation under protection services, parking enforcement, I see that. Could you explain that $30,000 loss? Just what?
Yeah, that revenue decrease is offset by expenditure decreases as well. We used to have a municipal shared services agreement where our parking enforcement officer was working with other municipalities, and they would pay for his time. So that's the $30,000 that we do no longer have him at the town. So we have that savings and expenditure-wise too, because we had to pay his salary here, and we also have the reduction of revenues.
Reduction of revenues, pardon me, Mr. Mayor. What are the revenues that we generate through the parking by law enforcement officers?
Well, that was municipal, intermunicipal revenue, so they had to pay us for his time when he went out to their municipalities and wrote parking tickets. So that's the revenue that we no longer have because the shared services agreement is no longer there.
How much revenue do we get from them?
We were getting approximately 33,000 last year. There might be some parking ticket revenue in there as well, maybe about 3,000, so approximately 30,000.
Okay.
Is it also related to the POA, the Provincial Offences Court revenue?
No,
No?
that is not, no.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councilor.
One other question, I guess this would be for the director, Mr. Mantle. The general labor position that we're proposing, and my question would be, what would be the impact if we didn't have that position, and we didn't hire for that particular position? What would be the impact on the town services?
Mr. Mantle.
The general labor position is to fill in for various, the work that the town does, the Public Works Department does now is different than what it has in the past. There's a need for certain labor-type intensive projects, whether it be minor repairs around town, that sort of thing. So that's what this position will fill in. It'll reduce other costs, contracted service-type costs. I think is where the savings will be in that one.
Okay, thank you.
I also noticed in the presentation that this was to possibly use this particular individual to replace for vacations. Would that be a safe assumption?
Ms. Pupo? Or
In the
Mr.
report,
Mantle?
I
Who
think-
wants to?
Someplace I read that it would help to.
I saw it too.
It would help to compensate for people that are on vacation, and I was just wondering that, is this not a cost of vacations? And that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Perhaps the councilor's going back to a discussion we had here
And some other-
about vacations.
The intent of the position is more on the facility side, and the repairs and maintenance and working with Kim on all the stuff that we currently get contracted out, that we could use someone that is in-house to do all of these jobs instead of paying every time someone needs to come into the building. I think as a result of that, if there was downtime, they would help to cover off some vacation, is the intent of the report that was presented by Mr. Mantle, and also help with snow clearing and those types of things where sometimes the gentlemen out in the public works area have a tough time getting all the services done, especially when there's lots of snow happening, and a lot of the other stuff will sit while they're doing snow clearing.
Just if I might, as a follow-up to that, is there a comparison of what it costs us to hire a contract worker versus a full-time employee of the town, taking into account benefits and what have you? And then what do we pay a contract person to do the same amount of work? Is it not cheaper to hire a contract worker?
What we found this year with just the odd jobs that we were having, or even around the town, like each job was costing almost $10,000, where, you know, there's a lot of the work that could have been done by someone in-house if we had them. So by the time we added up some of these contracted services or just minor repairs that we were having done, You know, even someone coming in changing light bulbs or breakers and stuff like that, it was well over the cost of this position. And we feel with a position like this, you can get a lot more work out of them because they would be in the building, you know, here for a 35-hour work week or 40-hour work week, whatever it is, and be able to do a lot of other jobs instead of just those specific jobs that are the only ones getting done because they're the only ones budgeted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others to this position that's proposed? Any other questions on that? I had a question on it, and that is in relation to, just as you've outlined, it's anticipated that there's some savings there. So you probably put in a guesstimate for what those savings are versus the total cost. So maybe, can you just fill us in on that, please?
The savings that you'll see for this position, what offsets the cost of this position is under Section 5, under roadway maintenance, under materials and supplies, you'll see a $70,000 decrease in contracted services there, and that is what is helping to pay for this position, and those are what we anticipate the savings to be.
So is it a total net savings, or is it a?
It's not a net savings because the position is in the salary line, so, right?
Yeah.
It's shared between the salary lines.
Okay.
So that's the total savings, the 70,000, and then the 48 would come off of that. So net savings right now is 12, but like, you know, 1 year with this position in place, we will have, you know, all of the costs and the actual, we can give you actual costs after the year of exactly how much was saved by not having to call, you know, an electrician in or a plumber in or so forth. You know, and that's why this is heavily weighted on the trade side of the position, where that's what we want to bring in, and then we would train them in the public works side if they had time to go out and help with snow clearing and those kind of things.
Okay. Just to Councillor kind of Kersey's comments earlier, I know that we do have a number of shared services with the library, for instance, financial, et cetera. Is there an opportunity that this person can, if requested, would be used by the library? Is that a possibility, or?
Well, it's a service that, I mean, we maintain that building, right? So if there's something that's required over there, it's definitely where this person, this individual would go out and do that work for that.
Okay, so that's a bit of an added bonus. Okay, thank you very much. Any others to this? Councillor Lane, on
Yeah,
that position?
just
and
a
then Councillor
follow-up
Rediak.
to this. This is under the title of general labor. Am I to understand now we're asking for this person to be an electrician?
No, we're asking this person to be a tradesperson that is familiar with all of these things. I mean, they know the rules about, you know, having the ESAs, having to inspect things and so forth. So whether they're an electrician or can just change breaker panels or the breakers and change the lighting and fix, you know, the things that come down off the lights, the covers and stuff, those types of things. So, but like plumbing and stuff like that, you can generally get a finishing worker, a tradesperson that has many different areas, and that's what we would be looking for.
Okay.
I appreciate the handyman aspect, Mr. Mayor, but I do believe that if we're starting to change breakers and that you need to be a qualified electrician. I don't believe that just anyone handyman can start changing breakers. They can change a light bulb and things, but I believe that we would be certainly liable if we had a handyman changing breakers and doing things like that. So it's just my thought on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rediak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Lane had anticipated my question, my misgiving.
All right, thank you. Who's next? Any other questions, comments on the budget? Councillor Papp.
Well, first of all, this is our last budget before election. Having been on this council 3 terms, I must say that generally speaking, and more importantly speaking, you've done a great job of trying to hold the line. I went through looking over the past 4 years. Our savings have come, save and accept salaries and reserves, from re-examination of how we deliver contracted services, and you go through this whole thing and you realize that $415,000 is nothing to sneeze at. The same token, I don't want people to be misunderstood that we've taken on additional staff. So if those additional staff that we've taken on, and I don't have the numbers here, they have obviously been given that mandate that they have to deliver better service. Because that's basically what it boils down to, and I hope the general public understands as well. we are growing. Assessment growth is going up, revenues are going up, and we're in the, I should say, very nice position of being able to pass on, if you want to call it that, a reasonable, very reasonable increase considering what some of our neighborhood municipalities are experiencing. And for that matter, I'm extremely pleased, and what I think I tend to agree in some cases, what the chief was saying, I think services have actually improved dramatically. I think there have been changes. I just go on the basis of level of complaints. A couple of my colleagues asked before the meeting, have I heard anything? And the answer is no, other than clear the sidewalk off, the snow off the sidewalks. And that in itself is a whole new service. So I'm glad, and I hope that we continue to build on that, and I hope that as well we continue to focus on that delivery service model that increases, as the CAO has said, a new level of excellence, customer service, that people, when they come to the town, realize that what value they're getting is great value considering where we've been. So on that note, I had very limited discussions and mostly very positive, and I was very, very, very pleased to see this. I do also, though, I do agree, if Mr. Mayor, if I, with Councillor Kersey, I think the library budget, we have to deal with that separately. I think there's just too much involved there at this point, and I respect what you're trying to do, but at the same token, with all the nuances and everything that's going on, I think it's worth our while to take a good, close examination of their operational requirements, along with what we actually are trying to establish as a level and program of service that we want. So on that note, I'll just stop, and thank you for the information.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Other members of council with questions, comments? It's very, I'm going to comment, and thank you, Councillor Papp, for outlining some of those items about the budget. Even when another member of council was asking a question on something, the answer was in the budget.
Yeah.
It was a number here. So there, you know, the questions that I had, they were answered within the document. If I had any questions, I sent them to the treasurer, and actually they were raised by colleagues this evening, so they were answered in anticipation. This, as you said, Councillor, is a good news budget. Save and except for something with library, and we did note that something has to be addressed with that. But overall, certainly it's a great budget, and kudos for finding all of the efficiencies to move forward. So all the questions that I had have been answered, which is good. So are we ready for the question? Thank you, Ms. Pupo. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King, that Committee of the Whole recommend that Council approve the 2014 operating budget and that the permissive grants remain unspent until such time as Council approves this allocation. And this is to be set, I believe, scheduled for the 3rd of February for that piece. And then Councillor Kersey, you had suggested you wanted to make some sort of amendment or something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to make an amendment that the library budget portion of the operating budget be redlined and remain unspent until such time as, A, the library board has an opportunity to make a presentation to council, and that the proposed meeting between the library board and staff has taken place and reported back to council.
Okay, thank you. Do you have that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I missed the last portion of that the library budget portion of the operating budget be redlined and remain unspent until such time as the library board has an opportunity to make a presentation to council.
And that the anticipated meeting between town staff and the library board has taken place.
Thank you.
Can you just read it back for all of us, please?
Certainly. That the library budget portion of the operating budget be redlined and remain unspent until such time as the library board has an opportunity to make a presentation to council, and that the anticipated meeting between town staff and the library board has taken place.
Okay, thank you. So that motion, it's Committee of the Whole, so the member can make the motion. Councillor Papp, you have a question, unless you want to speak to it.
No, I just wanted, I don't want it to, and I'll take very quickly that I agree with you, just that it doesn't mean that you don't stop spending the natural salaries and that, you continue on with the operational aspects. Doesn't mean that the budget is unfrozen. So
Yeah, it
until-
remains unspent.
Right.
Yeah, maybe we delete that.
I need, that word was kind of can have major implications.
You're right.
Somebody could say,
Be redlined?
it's not what you're saying.
Redlined? Is that
Red line is.
Red line.
redlined?
So it stays at the same operating base that it is, right? Is
Yeah.
that a good way to say it, Mr. Stru- Right?
Exactly.
That's fine.
Okay, maybe the deputy clerk can read it back to us.
That the library budget portion of the operating budget be redlined until such time as the library board has an opportunity to make a presentation to council, and that the anticipated meeting between town staff and the library board has taken place.
Okay. Counselor Pat,
Yeah,
you're good
okay,
with
I'm
that?
good. I'm-
Counselor Kersey?
I'm
Okay.
good with that.
Discussion, Counselor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe through Councilor Kersey's comments that the result of the meeting between staff and library board had to be reported to council too, and I don't think that was captured in the amendment. I think that was an intention, because what is presented to council from the library board may be a bit different than what staff and the library board talk about. So we should get the whole picture before we deal with it. Can that be built into the amendment?
Happy with that.
So that the anticipated meeting between town staff and the library board, it says has taken place, you want it, and has been reported to council?
Yeah, I believe the intent was that be reported to council so that we could look at, all aspects of it, be council and library board, council and staff and library board. So all the pieces are in there.
Has taken place and is reported to council. Okay, I think this captures it, Counselor, so that it would be, you, Madam Clerk, could you,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the end of the resolution, and that the anticipated meeting between town staff and the library board has taken place and is reported to council.
Yep.
okay? Thank you, Counselor. Anything further on this? Did you have something, Counselor? I thought. saw your
Just a
hand.
question with regard to this, but when we're ready to discuss this motion, or are we doing?
We
that?
are ready to discuss
We're
it.
ready. Just a question for information. If our discussion with the library, of course, involves the issue of Maple Acre, among others, and the implications of a decision with regard to Maple Acre may mean a difference in the budget number than the one that's here. So I'm just wondering how that fits into our overall deliberation with respect to the budget. We approve this budget, but have room in there for either a greater or smaller amount related to the libraries. Just
I would say that's why the Counselor's suggesting it be redlined and this meeting will occur, Counselor.
That's why we need
Want to respond to that?
Well, in the current budget that was put forward at 6%, there was an allowance for Maple Acres to continue throughout 2014 in the form that it is at the present moment.
Yeah. So,
There certainly are budgetary implications of a decision with respect to Maple Acres going forward. I don't know whether we can solve that in the short term, and I guess we could continue, as long as we're still funding the library based on what's been historically there, until such time as we complete all of those pieces. I don't know.
Does that answer your question, Counselor?
yeah, I wasn't asking to get into the substance of the discussion. That's always going to be a difficult one. I just wanted to be sure that we're not handcuffing ourselves in the event of any decision that we make going forward. So it sounds like we're not.
I believe it's
So-
open.
Go, great, terrific. I'm happy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Others? We ready for the calling of question on the amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. And now to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried as amended. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Pupo, for your presentation. Thank you to staff for putting together the budget. We look forward to those discussions with the library, and it has been moved by Councilor Ribbiak, seconded by Councilor King. This special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Monday, February 3rd, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.